an integration specialist. She spent much of her career, as I say, working with the autists and discovering their special gifts, and she really is a lifelong student of consciousness. So it's always so exciting to talk to Susie, because she is always breaking new ground, which I think we're going to be doing today, just to set up for this. But so, Susie, welcome. It's beautiful to have you here again on the channel. I know my audience really loved our last two conversations, so welcome.
Thanks for having me again, Pam.
And I'd really like to start with something I've picked up from your website, that we're running right into Lionsgate now on August the 8th, which of course it happens every year. But you have actually said this is no ordinary Lionsgate. And I'd love to explore why you feel that, why you're saying that.
I think we're finally at a time in human history where we can embody more of who we are in truth. And other Lionsgates feel like they've been preparing us for that, but we're right in the thick of it now. We're right in the capacity to embody more of our oneness. And for our Lionsgate this year, I titled that "The Courage to Be Who You Are in Truth," because I think that's what's right here, right now. And on the one hand, it is so exciting. And on the other hand, we all know that as we're receiving more of who we are in truth, that doesn't always feel comfortable to those around us, right? So it does take a fair amount of courage to actually just show up as who you actually are, as your unique piece of the puzzle. And just what I'm seeing energetically and multidimensionally right now, we've got so much support to be who we are in truth I'm really excited about this Lionsgate for that reason.
Yeah, and I think your courage, heart energy opening, truth, authenticity, that's the Aquarius side. It's all kind of coming together. And in the beautiful conversation you had with my good friend Heather Ensworth yesterday, the day before, you were talking about this shift to wholeness, from separation to wholeness. But it's the fact that we have to embody this evolutionary shift, because this evolution is actually happening through our physicality. So we can't dissociate and split off. So for those of you of the audience that may not have heard that conversation, would you just like to share a little bit of what you were talking to Heather about?
Yeah, we were discussing the fact that just how empowering and powerful it is to actually do our own inner work, not just for ourselves, but the way in which that impacts humanity as a whole, because we are all one. And so when we are with things that arise within us, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, when we're with that and present to it, we can neutralize that. We can neutralize that energy. And as we do that for ourselves, that is then fed into the collective. And I'm a firm believer that the more coherent any one of us becomes, the more we have an impact in that greater field. So what we do for ourselves and the way we love and nurture and care for ourselves through various processes, the way we choose our timelines, we choose where we want to go, that has, the more coherence we have within, the more we're able to impact the whole. And what's getting really exciting right now is I think there are more and more people focused on doing their own inner work, knowing the power of that, becoming coherent, and therefore humanity has the opportunity to become that much more quickly than it has been able to in the past.
Yeah, coherence is a superpower, for sure.
Yeah.
And, heart math, as we know, have done so much work into heart coherence, how your heart's toroidal field expands enormously when you're in coherence, and the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart. But coherence is kind of the start point, isn't it? Because unless we have that foundation of coherence, nothing else works. If we're jazzed up and agitated and distracted, distracted and scattered, nothing else will work in our energy field. We've got to have that solid foundation of coherence. And then we can add in other beautiful things like compassion, etc.
And I think that's just it. When we start focusing back on our hearts, when we go back in, breathing into that heart space, finding regulation within ourselves, letting information come to the surface, and instead of pushing it away, like literally breathing through it, loving ourselves through it, having compassion for ourselves, we build a field of love, compassion, and understanding. And as that field grows, anybody that comes into the proximity of that field has an invitation to become that themselves.
Yeah.
Like we're not doing it for somebody else, we're not making it happen, but as our fields are coherent, as we're treating ourselves in that way, anybody who interacts with us is going to have the opportunity to do that as well. And it's more and more likely that they'll accept that opportunity as that field grows in coherence.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a difficult word, infect, but it's almost like we're infecting other people with that coherent energy. And I know that even business schools like Yale and Harvard have done a lot of work on this, particularly if somebody is in a business presentation, they're the presenter, their level of energy will affect the decision the audience takes about their proposal. Because, if they are in coherence, the audience is much more likely to say, yes, we're going to go with this, than if they're kind of shifty-eyed, scattered, nervous, it's not going to work. So even business schools have done a lot of work into this whole issue of coherence and incoherence as a byproduct of business presentations. So it's fascinating.
I think the other thing that coherence does, I love that example because I noticed that in the New World Portal too. It's like if my field is more coherent and maybe I'm getting ready to offer information that might be more expansive than what we've talked about before in a different place, if that field is coherent and people start stepping into that coherence themselves and we collectively build that field, what I notice is people can receive all kinds of information that they might not have been able to receive if it was, like you say, all scattered and incoherent. But when that field is stable, and when people are knowing that they're building into the stability of that field, then all kinds of amazing things can start happening that just simply can't happen in an incoherent space.
Because it's, by definition, it's more expansive, it's more spacious, and open up to possibilities rather than the fear where everything contracts. We can literally feel that physically, everything contracts. So that makes sense. And the more that a number of us can stay in that heart coherence field, we're building very solid scaffolding, like energetic foundations for the next step for humanity. That's how I see it. I see it like scaffolding, and then come the bricks and mortar, etc. But you've got to have that really solid foundation. The more we can sustain it, the more solid the foundation is. So you're doing absolutely beautiful work. And I'd love you to talk about the New World Portal, because you don't call it a New Earth Portal, you call it a New World Portal. And I'd love to dig into that a little too.
Yeah, and I had my guides, my team, when we were looking at that name, I was asking the same question, like, why isn't it New Earth? But for me, Pam, we each are our own worlds.
Yeah.
We each are our own worlds. And as we were just talking, we can be an incoherent world unto ourselves, and therefore we are going to bring to us all kinds of incoherent experiences. Or we can build into that coherence and we can become that world. So it's called the New World Portal just for that reason. We are each stepping in our own sovereignty into the world of our own making, the world of our own creation. And as such, when you've got people in their sovereignty stepping into the world of their own creation, that creates a world as well. More of that energy starts to coalesce, and then everybody in a particular community has particular kinds of experiences. And they may not be the experiences that people who are more vested in separation energy are having, right? So more experiences of wholeness, more experiences of oneness. And so, yeah, for me, we are the portal to our new worlds. We are the portal to that new world experience. And the more we have it, the more we create that around us. And it's becomes the only thing you really know. It becomes the only experience you can have.
Yeah, and the only thing you have any control over. Because
yes.
It really is, and I've often said, this is an inside job. Because we're working with our own bubble. And I had a while back, I had a very interesting conversation with a chap called Paul Levy, who's a Tibetan Buddhist. And part of that conversation was about me asking him, is there actually an objective reality? Everything ultimately subjective. It starts with us and our own bubble and our own world and our own internal coherence and frequency, as you're saying, Susie, and then that will broadcast out to build a collective reality on that frequency, which is very stable and very loving and very compassionate. So, yeah, I really get what you're saying, and I really understand how you're seeing the whole process from the inside out. Hence the new world portal, as opposed to because New Earth is largely collective, isn't it, when we refer to it?
Well, and I don't think that we're not separate from the evolutionary process that's taking place right now. And I know it can feel like it's battering us around every now and again, with the things that are going on. But I think shifting that and really understanding that we are co-creating this new world, and we have to create it in the image and the likeness that we would like to experience. And as we do, we also have more capacity to, again, not do something necessarily for someone else, but be able to create a very coherent invitation to others to join this worldview, you might say, if they so choose. They might have other reasons for being here, other desires in this incarnation, but to create a coherent field and to build on that and to be able to have really unique experiences of who we are in truth because of it sets the stage for that to be available to others as well. Absolutely. And I love that. That's no force, that's no push, that's no somebody else has to get there, or even that we have to get somewhere. It's like, no, we're just remembering what's always been there. We're becoming coherent with who we are in truth, and that becomes a natural invitation to anybody else.
Yeah, and I think there's a principle in physics, in fact, I know there is, called downward causation, where high frequency energy, coherence has a much greater influence on lower of distracted, scattered, than the other way around. So it acts like a magnet, and I think this probably has a lot to do with magnetic resonance as well. When you're coherent, there's much stronger magnetic resonance because the heart is magnetic and the heart toroidal field expands, as we talked about. But it's also partly, I think, the Buckminster Fuller philosophy of they're having a way better time over there than we are here. I'm going to go and join that timeline because that looks great. So I think it's partly at that level as well. People just want to shift, they just want to migrate to that.
Can I give you a personal example of that, Pam?
Yeah, please do.
Not too long ago, I had to go have blood work done at, in the US, we have the LabCorp, where you just go in, everybody's there to have their blood drawn. And I get anxious about those kinds of things. So I went in, and as I was there, I was working to just soothe, myself, my own inner children, whatever aspects of that. And all of a sudden, I heard, watch what's happening. I heard, watch what's happening. And it was like my higher self was speaking about me. My higher self said, watch what's happening. She's soothing herself. She's soothing the all. And I heard it and I thought, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that my nervous system was calm, my nervous system was regulated, but all the other 30 people in that LabCorp waiting room had gone still. Their voices went down, their phones went down, and I was going, what just happened? And I think it was Spirit's way of just showing me, like, this is just not something to say. This is actually what it looks like as we're regulating our own nervous systems and we're supporting ourselves, how it does have an impact in the field around us. And it's a humbling experience because we can talk about these things, but to see it like, whoa, it like happened in real time. I thought, makes you want to try it again, right? It makes you want to kind of go, oh, okay, I'm just going to soothe myself, and I'm going to nurture and love and have compassion for the various parts of myself that emerge, because it just doesn't impact me.
Yeah, that is so beautifully said, Susie. And also, we know from Veda's work the effect that anxiety has on the blood, because that is water based as well, so it's very dramatic if we're anxious. But isn't it interesting that we can act as lighthouses for a collective, and again, this principle of downward causation, because we know if there's a room of people and somebody with very coherent radiant presence enters a room, it affects everybody equally. If somebody's very angry and agitated that enters a room, everybody can feel that energy very palpably. And so we're starting to recognize our power, aren't we, as masters of our energy. And before every single one of these conversations, I always say, let this be for my highest good of, in this case, Susie and I, highest good of all, highest good of the earth. And so whatever we share in these conversations, I set the intention for it to ripple out, not just going to be for good of you and I, but to ripple out for the benefit of all. And that can only help. That can only help with setting that intention.
Well, and we know it helps, Pam, because your community is so amazing and so loving, and they feel that intention coming from you. That's so obvious that that's impacting everybody that you reach, for sure.
And how easy is that to do?
Exactly.
It's all for free and how easy. So I think being aware that we are energy beings and starting to operate as energy beings, and that we have mastery over our frequency, even when we were a bit panicked. I was telling you about a personal example last week, which I don't want to go into, when I was absolutely freaked by something. You gotta be kidding. This is not. But then I had enough sense to say, I'm not doing that. We're not going down that timeline. I'm not, even in the moment, I had enough kind of sensibility to say, no, we're not doing that. And so I think in these times, we are becoming more aware of that. We're light beings, we're energy beings, and being aware that everything is frequency. Everything's energy, everything is coherence, and really walking our talk with that in a much bigger way than we've ever done. Because all of us have lived in a state of separation. We're very aware of that. And so we're moving into very, very different times. But what I'd love to start to talk about, and this is kind of hot off the press because Susie just shared this with me just before we started recording, and this is immensely exciting, because I was going to ask you anyway the question about what are the authors seeing and what are the authors teaching us about these times that we are in. So I would love you to share what you shared with me before we recorded.
Yeah, and so I want to preface this with what I shared with you about, like, I've had this one reference point for close to 30 years now, like watching the multidimensional consciousness of this population and watching what they were doing and what they're involved in and what was maybe causing dysregulation, what was supporting them. So, in retrospect, I really love having that reference point, because sometimes things come about as what we're going to talk about that I'm like, okay, what is that? Is that real? And you go, yes, it absolutely is, because it tracks with everything else that came before it. So a while ago, I think maybe in one of our last conversations, I was talking about connecting with the quantum upgrade with Leela Quantum Tech, and having a lot of autistic individuals, just sharing that they needed more support in regards to that. And so we did that. We put out the spectrum frequencies, and that seemed to be really supportive of this population. Once that base was set, then all of a sudden, there was another client that I have that she has multiple spellers that she works with. All of the spellers were talking about something called a TAU protein, which I knew nothing about at the time, but a TAU protein that was negatively impacting their ability to communicate and regulate and generally be more here. So I went back to them and we had that conversation. We put out some frequencies that were supporting that. And we were getting all kinds of feedback that something's really happening. It's like regulation is taking place. And that was really, really exciting to hear those kinds of things. At the same time, vibrationally, energetically, multidimensionally, I started seeing this almost like these lines of energy or these tubes of energy that were cutting right through the astral plane. And at the time, I had no idea what that was, but I was assuming that maybe the consciousness of autism was strengthening, was being more empowered in their ability to regulate and communicate. And I've always seen the astral plane as that plane of consciousness, Pam, where most of these highly refined souls have a really hard time interfacing with. Because to me, the astral plane has been, especially the lower astral, has been the place where we've projected out all of the things that we couldn't process ourselves. So it's kind of a heavy field, you might say. So I was seeing these tubes, and some of the kids that I was working with were talking about those. And then all of a sudden, just within the last week, 5 days maybe, I had another conversation with this same woman, and we were talking about, she said, Susie, now all of a sudden, all the kids are talking about the astral plane. And I went, what's going on? So I was like, can I look? And I looked into the astral plane, and what was happening, it was almost like all of those tubes that were maybe individual ways of coming through the astral plane. And I have several individuals that I'm interacting with that are consciously choosing to be able to more fully integrate. So it was like they were finding their way through the astral and being able to do that. All of a sudden, all of those were linking up and becoming a bigger space. And it was like, the best way I can describe it, and the way they shared about it, was that a field of love was being created in the lower astral plane. And when I saw that, I number one, it's like, ooh, I was so emotional about it, because again, these souls have always said, we can't be here until here's the frequency of love. And so here they're creating a frequency of love in the lower astral plane. And if that's happening, if they're creating that you might say, from higher dimensions in, then that also lightens up us and the feeling of the weight of what we've projected out. Is that?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm like going, holy cow, they've created this whole field, this resonant field, coherent resonant field of love in the lower astral plane. And one of the things I was noticing when I looked at it was that it looked like that consciousness was pulling certain souls through a veil, like out of separation into oneness, out of separation into love. And so I asked them about that. And they said, yes, this field is growing and growing and growing. And more souls are going to be ready to live in that field, that coherent field of love. And as they do, that whole field, again, what we were just talking about, that world gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes more of an invitation to others who might want to choose it. And it was just mind-boggling to me, Pam, and it was also a little bit humbling because I think that we all kind of go, okay, what can we do for this population so that the frequency of love can be here? And we know, back to what Heather and I were talking about the other day, that when we do our own inner work, when we are capable of loving parts of ourselves that haven't been loved, we start creating that coherent field. So yes, we can do that. And yes, that is very helpful. And yes, they're also, from their vantage point, really being able to clear something out now that I've never been able to see them even touch, let alone clear out.
So they're leading this building of the field of love. They're leading it.
They're leading it. And isn't that amazing that we can't be here until here is the frequency of love, and we'll create it along the way. We'll create it through all of these different dimensions. And one thing I haven't shared before either is early on in my experience, one of the things that had me so fixated on this population was when I opened up, I was able to see them in other dimensions. I was able to see that consciousness navigating other dimensions and almost descending through them. So descending through those levels of consciousness is one thing. Building a frequency of love in each one of those dimensions is another thing altogether. And the fact that that's all the way down into the astral realm just lets me know personally, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that humanity is not only going in the right direction, but this might be more of a spontaneous kind of experience that's going to start to emerge. You know, there's all of us who have been, conscious of these things, doing this kind of work, setting the base. But I also think two things might be getting ready to happen at once. That field of love that's already been started to create here is a base. And that field of love that's coming down through all of these dimensions and getting closer and closer all the time is another reference point. But when those two go together, when those two fields go together, I don't know the when of that, but that it is going to happen or that it is about to happen. I am having a hard time seeing it any other way at this point, having watched them for so long.
That's absolutely monumental and so exciting, Susie. it feels like popcorn, that once
Yes.
those two touch, it's just going to be like popcorn, because people are going to spontaneously start to have very different multi-dimensional experiences, speaking with the trees and the elementals and really feeling profound love for all beings in their heart in a way that is almost indescribable. It would be very hard for them to put into words because it's so deep. And that's going to be just astonishing. The fact that the authors are also clearing and neutralizing a lot of the real murk that we've had in that lower astral plane. That's another part of this, isn't it? That will enable the collective to make a much easier leap, a much bigger leap than we'd ever anticipated, because that energetic structure just wasn't there before.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that field of consciousness I've just always seen as doing the heavy lifting. It's in many ways, and doing the heavy lifting just because their consciousness is capable of it. But I also think that it reminds us that as much as is perceived as falling apart right now, it's falling apart for a very good reason, because there's a new energetic structure that's already, the scaffolding, as you say, it's already there. We're all building it and helping to co-create it. And as we know that this population is doing their part as well, we can start aligning with that. We can start creating that connection point between collective human experience and what they're trying to bring here. Yeah.
So it's just so beautiful, because it also reminds me of what Keone Hanalei has said in the past.
I love his work.
Yeah, ancient Lemuria didn't disappear. It's just humanity fell from love. And once humanity reaches the frequency of love again, we will start to see ancient Lemuria. And I don't think he was just referring to the land, the lands of ancient Lemuria. He was referring to that level of high frequency love. That kind of dimension of connection to all living beings. And it was probably the most perfect civilization that we can ever have any understanding of, ancient Lemuria. They lived in harmony with all of nature and all the beings. They didn't kill to eat. It was really very balanced and harmonious and loving and beautiful. And that's not a bad target to aim for with all that you are, all that you're sharing. So, and it really does emphasize what so many other people are saying, and I'm seeing with the astrology, that we are just absolutely on the energetic precipice of something huge, where there's going to be a jump or a leap. It isn't linear, it isn't logical, it's a jump or a leap, where so many of us, and it's just going to be like popcorn, as I said, that's the image I keep going in my mind, that once some of us start to pop, we're all going to start to pop in a much bigger way into something that we've never even imagined or been able to describe, because it really is in another dimension.
I want to go back to what you were saying about Keone and this Lemurian piece, because I also don't think it's by happenstance that so many of these souls, when I started working with them, I would say, well, like, when's the last time you were here? Have you been here before? Is this brand new? So many of them would say the last time we were here, it was at the time of Lemuria, when we had bodies of light, when we were the frequency of love. And so coming back in this incarnation, and in and of itself is mind-boggling, because you're like, wow, you're holding that frequency still, but we're not there yet. We're not back at Lemuria yet. We're working towards maybe not going backwards, but having an embodied awareness of who we are in truth, which to me is love. It's light, And so I love that they have that reference point. And I also love this idea that, we've been seeing through the lens of separation for so long. We've been conditioned to it. It's nobody's fault. We've just been conditioned in that way. But it becomes amazing when you start watching so many, I'll say on this side, so many starting to see those diagnosed with autism through new eyes, through capacity, through through the energetic expression that they actually are. And we're seeing this more and more. I think goes hand in hand with what Keone was saying about as that frequency arises, we see what's right in front of us as it actually is, instead of through the lens of separation. We see what's truly there and has just been hidden from us all the time. And I think that I have to put that as a reference point around autism. But when you see more and more people acknowledging them, Veda's work, Kai Dickens and the telepathy tapes, when you see more and more people recognizing who they are and the capacity and the gift, that just tells me that our collective frequency is rising enough to see what's always been there. Yeah.
Like it lived all of our lives with a very dirty windscreen, and that's now being cleared. So it's still within us. We just haven't had the expanded perception to see it. And now, very, very soon, we're all going to be, or many of us are going to be seeing that. And it's so fascinating that so many of the autists have come back almost as a soul tribe.
Yes.
To work together from ancient Lemurian light body lineage to ignite, to lead the way, lead the pack, and ignite the collective to this field of love. I mean, that's just, from the lives they have led, that what a complete turnaround in perspective that is as well. And that must be so thrilling for you with your work after 30 years. Really thrilling. It's such a validation of your work, Susie.
It has been, it's so encouraging is what it is, Pam. It's, you see that so many of these individuals are also have a focus right now on that astral plane. And I love what you say about them working almost like as a collective, because that's exactly how they do work. They work in that field of oneness, and they each have their own sovereign pieces of that puzzle within that field. But it's at a different octave than most of humanity has been playing at in separation. So that's why, oh my gosh, the fact that these fields of consciousness are becoming so much closer than they've ever been able to be before, that there's beginning to be an interface, in a way that is productive, supportive for both, I'd say both those of us who are attempting to support them and those who are supporting us in the process. It's really exciting. I have no idea what it looks like or but that image of popcorn that you were using, I really love, because that's exactly what it feels like. And we're witnessing it, in our own families. We're witnessing it in the people that are around us, where all of a sudden there's an awareness of self, more so than even capacities like telepathy or, multidimensional sight or those kind of things. More importantly to me right now is I'm listening to people just have a deeper awareness of themselves. Oh, this is something I keep doing. I don't think I want to do that anymore. Or, oh, this is the way I've, experienced this or that. It's like you're hearing people going, we just want more love. Yeah. We want more oneness. We want more wholeness. And wherever they're grabbing a hold of that, it is taking hold. It is taking hold.
And it's fascinating, because the way you're talking, Susie, again reminds me of the Aquarian energy, where it is about really discovering your authenticity, your own truth, your own unique essence in a deeper way than you've ever discovered it before, and also giving back those gifts to the collective. It's quite paradoxical in that way as well. And, also when you're talking about this field of love, I don't think we necessarily have to know exactly how it will manifest, because consciousness always comes first. Consciousness always precedes the manifestation. So as long as we get the heart coherence and the compassion and the consciousness in a good place, then we know, the final art on the canvas is going to be magnificent, but our focal point has to be that consciousness of love. It's that's the foundation to get right. So yeah, it doesn't matter that none of us can finally describe, what your data is so malleable and fluid and magical and, lit up and sparkly. I think it's going to be very hard to put words to that at this stage where we are in consciousness, because I've often talked about us as being the bridge builders, and many people do see this generation of people alive now as the bridge builders, but boy, the artists are ahead of us, doing it for us in such a magnificent way. Must be thrilling for you.
Yeah, and I'll put a little caveat. I'm not sure that they're doing it for us, but they are definitely creating an invitation that we can take, just like that popcorn. Like it's like they're, and it is also true that there's a capacity there. I'll say a more refined dimensional capacity in that collective than we have known as a human race since probably the time of Lemuria. And so the fact that that's even in our space, even in our worlds, is just remarkable to me. And I know on a physical level, so many of them look so dysregulated or look like, to the naked eye, you might say, not to this eye, thine eye, but to those eyes of separation, we can look at this population and go, yeah, not functioning very well. I hear what you're saying, Susie, but I'm not seeing that yet. But again, as we are being altered, as we are shifting, as we're coming into greater coherence within ourselves, that eye that actually sees starts to see. And when it does, it's like it's always existed that way. And I also wonder, Pam, it's like with that popcorn, this is another thing I'm noticing. Some individuals that I've interacted with, my whole life, all of a sudden are having some of the conversations that we're having, but they don't know that they never had that conversation. Yep. It's like they don't realize that has been an evolution in their process. And it's almost like, no, it's like, oh, here we are. You're having this conversation. And of course, we've always had this conversation this way. And it takes me a minute because I'm like, wait, who are you now? It's
like so interesting, Susie. I've seen that with some of my my long-term friends who I would think had absolutely zero interest, and they've had zero interest in spirituality, philosophy, astrology. Never asked me about my days or what I do. I can ask them about their days, but they don't know what to ask about my days. And all of a sudden, we're having much deeper conversations, and it's like there's just been a leap. They haven't had to go step by step as we have very often. They've just kind of arrived in a different dimensional space, and it's very exciting to see, really exciting. And there's a kind of instinctive remembrance, and they're not even aware it's a memory, an ancient memory, but it's a kind of instinctive remembrance of some wisdom that came from way, way, way back. We've just cleaned the windscreen, and these things are sort of leaking through.
I want to ask about this too, Pam, because I feel like, you mentioned, doing this work and being on this path for quite a while, and like, it's never easy to be a bushwhacker. It's never easy to have awareness before others have it. And I think that this is also a really good time as part of our ability to love ourselves, have compassion for ourselves, to really stop for a minute and acknowledge, you've been doing this for quite some time. I've been doing this for quite some time. So many souls have been supporting in so many ways the collective consciousness of autism, mind-boggling to me. I think that it's a really good time to just stop, especially for our bodies, and just go, wow, you've really carried me through a lot. You've really gave me the opportunity to have so many experiences. It's like, I don't know, it's like all of a sudden, I was saying this to Heather after our conversation, that something came out of that for me anyway, that was like, whoa, like, on this planet for 65 years, and this body has been carrying all these fluctuations and all these changes, and the awareness that has been made available over this incarnation. It's like, I don't think I've ever stopped and went, wow, thank you. It's like, thank you. It just gave me a different perspective of these human life experiences, and how amazing it is to be able to have one, even when at the beginning it's very challenging because you're bushwhacking through muck. It's like
summation of life.
yeah.
That pretty well sums it up. Yeah, I know. No, and we need to just stop, take a breath, because I think people like you and I and many others just keep going and going and going and going, and we forget to kind of just take a breath as we're going up the mountain. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because only this morning, somebody I was at school with, which is an awfully long time ago, who now lives in New Zealand and follows my work, she wrote to me with some photos of when there were four of us hiking in a beautiful northwest in Cumbria, Lake District, part of England, when we were 15. I was just looking at those photos this morning and thinking, wow, at that age you had no idea, what you were going to go through, the challenges, the high points, etc. So yeah, so it's very opportune that you mention that right now. But I think also to be alive in these times, although the 3D world is loud and scary and colourful and crashing and ridiculous and more pantomime every day, we are living in an absolutely extraordinary time of evolution. And that's why this conversation with you today is just icing on the cake, because what you're seeing is actual evidence of the autists changing and having different conversations, different telepathic conversations, coming together as a loving collective. From Lemurian times, you're really seeing the evidence behaviorally of what so many of us have been saying, seeing astrologically or via our channeling or whatever it is. You really are putting icing on the cake. And that's why I think this conversation with you today is so incredibly important.
It also takes me back to oneness, Pam, because, if that field changes, then this field over here changes. And if that field changes, this changes. And I think that we are having just this cascade effect that's starting to happen. And for me, seeing dimensionally, if you will, it's like, again, that same site can feel like it's like a curse sometimes, or early on it did. And now it's like, oh no, it's like being able to see something that's happening in the astral lets me know and gives my nervous system calm to say, well, if it's already happening in the astral, it is going to trickle into the physical, because that's what happens. Energetic fields are impacting each other, change is happening, and then that comes into our worlds. And how amazing that these bigger cycles, you might say, these bigger fields, these bigger cycles are impacting our human lives, right down into our human experience. And then all of a sudden, one day we know something that we didn't know, or we have an awareness that we really would like more love on this planet, and so we start adding our energy to that.
But as you say, everything is connected. Everything is
all connected.
So once there's a shift here with the butterfly's wings, but it sounds a lot more than the butterfly's wings, then obviously it has ripple effect through many, many dimensions, energy systems, etc. So yeah, and the word cascade I love. It's like a waterfall that has a lot of life force in it and is very powerful. And Susie, do you think that part of this is the legacy of Three Eye Atlas? Because didn't the author say that Three Eye Atlas, so goosebumps, Three Eye Atlas was operating on the frequency of love, that was the same frequency as they were at? Didn't they say that?
Yes, and what's interesting is last year at this time, I think there was like an 8-8, 8-8-9-9-10-10 or something along those lines. We did a series. And what they were talking about then is that floating through our solar system is this Three-Eye Atlas that is much more coherent with them, coherent in that field of love. And what's really beautiful is, so that field of love, again, got seeded. You just hit, I didn't catch that before. Pam, this is like, in real time, I'm going, oh my gosh, yes, I was so in the moment of what was going on in the astral plane. But yes, that's exactly what took place. That set or seeded that frequency of love through our solar system, and they can utilize that because it's more resonant with who they are, and now they can clean up the astral.
And that was what you were channeling about exceeding this new level of love. You were channeling. I heard your channelings about that. And everybody was saying, oh, bunkum, Three Eyes, it's a rock. It's, that's ridiculous. Yeah. But, it's very interesting that we've got these very powerful frequency connections.
Yeah. And that that series then is like kind of it. I think it started at 8-8 because at 8-8 last year was when that first young man, Gavin, said that he wanted to create a template of being here. And I met him in Sedona, and that has taken on a whole life of its own. I mean, he's got such an amazing team around him now that is just facilitating the next steps of that, which is so beautiful. And then we had, I think it was, 10, 10, 11, 11, 12, 12, I think is what it was last year, with Three Eye Atlas coming through. And you just hit it. I didn't even see it until we're having the conversation. So it's exactly what happened. That frequency came in again, oneness. This happens over here, it impacts this over here, that's then able to do its part, and then the next part, and it's just unfolding. It is a cascade.
Yeah. Do you feel that they're more?
I love that. Yeah. I'm still sitting here like trying to integrate that as fast as I can, but
you have to look and lie down in a dark room. So do you feel that they are more cavalry, if you like, more of those high consciousness beings like Three Eye Atlas going to come through our solar system?
100%. Yeah. And it just feels like, that was just the first blush. That was the seeding. But again, that flies through and something is done with that seeding. It's almost like consciousness knows exactly when to add the next bit. So to me, it's like Three Eye Atlas moves through, and that broader consciousness is going, okay, what's done with that? Where is humanity now? How is that being utilized? Gets utilized maybe with autistic individuals in the astral plane, or with us being able to love ourselves more deeply, and then another one will come through and drop something else. And but it's all a loop, it's all interconnected. And I think the more we see things like interstellar objects or things that we just didn't have access to before because we weren't ready for it. When these things are going through, we're ready for it. That's why they're moving through at that time. So, I'm going to have to ponder this some more, Pam.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad, just pinging off each other here. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
It's so interesting as well, Susie, because I've talked a great deal about 2025 to 2027 being an accelerated period of evolution for humanity. Of course, it'll go on forever and ever, but we're right in the thick of it now, as you say, and are seeing day to day with your work. We're right in the thick of this. So you really feel, just to kind of pull this together, because we're sort of coming up to the hour now, you really feel that we are absolutely at this precipice of energetic shift that is going to be very significant indeed towards love for the collective.
100%. And again, the invitation is so solid now. It's just a matter of people incrementally taking that invitation. But to me, and like you say, the more that take it, the more easy it is for someone else to take it. And I feel like that's, and I also have to say, I kind of love watching the old 3D reality just crumble in real time. I'm like watching going, wow, we've been looking at some of these topics for eons of time, it feels like. And now it's on mainstream TV or it's showing up in, I think in one of your recent videos, Pam, you were talking about all the, the shadow coming to light and all the things that are just, they just can't hide anymore.
Unstoppable, just popping up all over the place, and more and more and more, through the rest of this year. Yeah, it's going to be, there's no hiding place, I think, from this point on.
No, and I think it's such a good sign, and it's also true that there are things emerging within us as well that there's no hiding place for. But what I keep saying is count that as a blessing, not as a curse. Count that whatever's arising as something that can arise. It's something that can be seen and loved and nurtured. It can be met. And that gets met, and then that dissolves, and then there's, you end up being more love than you are separation. That's what basically happens.
Because it's like the kind of 100th monkey effect. But as you say, this invitation invitation to living in a higher level of love is there. Why wouldn't you take that? Do you want to stay in the 3D chaos and drama? Is that where you prefer to be? Why wouldn't you take that invitation to live in a much more loving world and a loving dimension? I mean, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? So it's like an IQ test. Why wouldn't you, why wouldn't you do that? So it really does feel immensely exciting. I mean, the astrology, as you know, is super powerful, and I've always said this is more of an inside shift of consciousness. Yes, there's going to be 10 tons on the outside, but don't wait for that to happen. You become the master of your energy internally, and you start to direct your focus on what do I want to create, and make that focus love. And we'll be just fine if that's what we're doing collectively.
Yes. Yeah. And we get these opportunities every single day, Pam, to have something come up. And, do we love it? Do we berate it? Do we, and to me, it's like, are we holding it in oneness, in wholeness, or are we separating ourselves again? And like you said, it's no brainer. It's like you want to choose that love both for ourselves and for the dynamics that we're living through, and it begets itself.
For
Yeah.
sure, yeah, and it's for the collective. It's for the animals, the
Mhm.
trees, the all the inner earth beings. It's for all of life, all of
Mhm.
life, because we are coming together as a huge family of love, and I think that's what we'll discover in these times as well as we shift from separation. That we are just living in this oneness. We are just fractal expressions of this divine intelligence of love, and I think we'll really start to understand that in a bigger way going forwards.
Yeah, yeah. I love your excitement in all of this, Pam. It's like it's so, I know, I can feel it. It's so infectious, and I am too. It's mind-boggling, what we're getting to experience in this incarnation, and it does make all the bushwhacking worth it, for sure.
Oh, that is a great line to end on. That's a great. You should have that as your legacy, Susie. Makes all the bushwhacking worth it. That's a great.
Yeah.
Great line. So it has been absolutely thrilling to spend time with you, Susie. We've gone over the jumps, A lot of them we didn't even expect to be there as jumps, and it's been really thrilling. And I really hope that this opens up people's minds and, more importantly, opens up people's hearts to where we are in this massive